Welcome everyone to the webinar. And today we have myself, Tracy from TAFE New South Wales, and Alex from Carers New South Wales, and we're also joined by a senior counsellor from Carers New South Wales, Maddie Ho. And we also have an interview that was pre-recorded for today from a lady named Chrissy Tay. She is a health coach, but also is a carer, and has sort of married her caring and her nursing background together, and you'll be able to hear about that shortly in the interview. As Alex mentioned before, if there are any questions, we'll be monitoring the chat pod, so if you can use that while we're listening to any of the presentations. And then, of course, we'll try and address them in those sort of natural breaks that we get between each thing. Yeah, please send your questions through. We'd be really interested to know what your feedback is, or if you've got any insight, into your own world as carers and maybe the topic that we're discussing. Okay, so today it's calling Live Well and some of those health issues that carers face and maybe ways that you could manage those. And then also looking at, I guess, with Maddie, she's bringing to the table some discussion around how Carers New South Wales can sort of construct their counselling sessions and the types of things that they run through with carers to help them, problem solve and build those skills, that we all need to sort of exist and keep on with our caring. So welcome, and I'll also do an acknowledgement to country. So I'd like to take this time to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather today, which is many, have been across all of New South Wales. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we also extend that respect to all other people present. So with my presentation, you'll see just a new little slide that we've put together. This is just a bit of a reflection, actually, what's on our website at the moment at TAFE, just to give you a bit of an idea. And I'm going to skip to the nice juicy bit around Chrissy. So Chrissy, as I said, is a health coach, and she's married her caring skills with her nursing profession to sort of bring to the table a service that hopefully supports carers in what they do and being well eventually, working through goals. So this is our video. It should be roughly around 16 to 20 minutes. So much for joining us, Maddie, and she is a senior counsellor at Carers New South Wales, and we'll give you a little bit of an understanding of, how maybe the carer counselling program works at Carer Gateway and any of those other things that you think are relevant. I'll be with you back shortly.
Yeah, so
thank you.
We've launched the Carer Gateway a year ago, actually this week. So we've just gone through 12 months of providing the services through the Carer Gateway, which is a national service that the government has launched. So you dial a 1-800 number, and depending on where you live, it ends up in the correct sort of region of where the people are that can help you with the services that you need. And the Carer Gateway is basically it's a go-to place where you call the 1-800 number and you end up with one of our intake officers who will have a chat with you about what you are looking for. And depending on what your needs are, they will then schedule like an intake interview with you. And that takes usually between 45 minutes to an hour. So it's quite a comprehensive look at your current situation, and it looks at what your own health situation is, what your financial situation is, what your work situation is, how you're coping with your caring situation. So all sorts of areas in your life, which is why it takes a little bit longer to go through that whole process. And together you then basically work out what the needs are. So the Carer Gateway has a couple of things on offer. One is like it's worth $3,000 carer directed package, which can be used, for example, to organize some respite. It can be used for organizing some support in the household or in the garden, depending on where you need help. And those $3,000 are available every 12 months. So that's one thing. Carer Gateway also organizes emergency respite. So that kind of sits a little bit on the side. It's if something happened to you as a carer and you urgently need support for the care receiver that you are looking after, then the Carer Gateway can put that in place as well. And that doesn't need an intake interview. This is kind of an obviously when it's an emergency, you just call in and they can organize someone to take care of your loved one while if you need to go to hospital or something has happened. But we also offer this, aside from this carer-directed package, there's also a one-off payment that can be tapped into. For example, a lot of carers use that to pay for course fees if they have decided to do some further education or to get a laptop. That's a $1,500 amount that can be used. So you can either have that or you can do the $3,000 self-directed package. So depending on what the needs are. And then we offer the 6 sessions of counseling. And we also have a in-person peer support group, which is basically if, there is a need to just feel more connected and be together with other carers. The peer support groups are quite, what's the word for that? So it's a 4-session get together. So 4 times you get together, and it's quite a directive sort of group environment where you work through certain issues that come up for carers that help increase the skills of dealing with your own stress situations in a better way. And then the groups are designed so that hopefully the people can continue the group forwards without having the facilitator from the Care Gateway there. So that is the idea. At the moment, the groups are run predominantly on Zoom, but we are trying to get them face-to-face as well. We've only done a couple face-to-face now since post-COVID has become available, of course, again. So so I work predominantly as the senior counselor. I get all the referrals that come in for counseling, and I wanted to share a little bit today, kind of open the door to the counseling room a little bit to give you an insight of what happens in a counseling session in a more concrete way, because a lot of the times, we go like, oh, I think I might need counseling, but I found that a lot of people don't actually know exactly what that means. And there's a great sort of, it's such a confidential area that it's a great gray zone. And, oftentimes carers in the intake interview, they appear stressed and things are really intense, or they have to make difficult decisions. But counseling is still this thing of, no, thank you, I can cope. So I wanted to put it into the context of what we're talking about here when we think about either going back to work or contemplating initiating some change, taking on a new course, even changing direction and making changes that help you in your life as a carer that might not necessarily be connected to the care recipient, to the person that you look after. And we found that in counseling, very often what the carer is confronted with is either a sense of guilt. It's this experience of, how can I move away and create something for myself while the person I love is struggling, they are stuck at home. I can't possibly create, something for myself in that sense. And the other area where guilt comes up is also that you go away and you might have to hand over the care to someone else. And they might not know as well what your loved one needs as you do. And that sense that you might expose them to someone who is strange to them or who they don't, might not connect with very well, all of that while you are going out there having your own beautiful time. There's a lot of guilt that can come up for people. And the other thing that we found happens a lot is that self-doubt that has crept in over time about your own capacity to actually do something else, to be out there in the so-called normal world where people just go about their beautiful lives, and you come in and, you're constantly stressed, your brain might be frazzled. You haven't got the space to focus on other things. You might need special arrangements that no one else does. And so there is a lot of that sense of, it's just all too complicated and I can't cope with this, right? And we found that those are typical things that pop up in carers' lives when they even begin to think about initiating some change for themselves from the situation that they are in. So I thought it might be worthwhile to, I don't know how much time I've got, so I'm going to focus first on talking a little bit about when a carer comes into counseling and says, okay, I want to make a decision, I want to make a change. And in the care situation, it's also like a lot of your focus has gone towards caring, and a lot of the other elements of your life have then over time been blended out. So what you might be good at, everything is, honed in towards how can I keep my loved one healthy, how can I keep them provided with what they need and all the rest of it. So when it comes to that space of making a decision for change, this sense of the loss of self is something that I thought might be worthwhile to look at a little bit closer, what we would do with that in counseling when that pops up, right? So one thing that we would start with, that we always start with, is we begin to disentangle the story. Because I found a lot of the time when people are in that space where they need to start making decisions, a lot of things get drawn on all in one hit. It's like there's this idea of wanting to make change, but then come all the but what ifs, and we usually reference or draw on too many elements at once, and it just all becomes overwhelming and confusing. So what we do in the counseling session, and that's what counselors often are really good at, they start pulling things apart and creating some space. Okay, we've got this element, let's just park that there. We've got this element, let's park that there. We've got, the motivation, let's bring that out and look a little bit more closely at that. So that can take some time to help slow the whole thing down and pull it a bit more apart. It's like having an entangled ball of wool, when you want to start knitting, but all you get is just this tangle. So you slowly start pulling the thread apart and create space so you can see how it's interwoven. That's maybe a nice metaphor. And once we do that, what usually emerges are parts of this story that have come in for the carer that block the movement forwards. And some of that is, for example, that we hold false beliefs about ourselves, right? So there's a lot of stuff that comes in from the past, even pre-caring situation, but that might have been reinforced while you were in the caring situation. And as an example is, for example, I was never good at learning. I was never good at school. So this whole situation, you carry that from a childhood part back into your adulthood or forwards into your adulthood. And it's just an overgeneralized idea about yourself, right? So that's a generalization that often pops up in the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, right? Another thing that often pops up is false beliefs about ourselves. So what we can and cannot do, what we are capable of achieving, that we have patience or we don't have patience, that we are intelligent enough. These are all things that we have sort of absorbed through our own life and created a generalization about that. And it's really worthwhile when we listen to stories of people to point out where these generalizations come up that haven't actually been referenced in the present, but they are referenced somewhere in the past. Does that make sense? It's like, today I still hold this belief, but there's actually nothing in my life that shows that that is true. In fact, if we have a closer look, we can see there's a lot of other things happening that tell me that this is not true. But our brain works in a way that it likes creating stories, it likes to generalize, and the stories that are emotionally the most charged are generally the ones that stay stuck in our heads, right? So we take these things apart and we start to question the elements of the story that are not helpful for where you want to go in your life, right? Another thing is what we call an introject. That's also like when your parents end up telling you, oh, you're just stupid, or you don't have enough patience for this, or You will never be able to get somewhere. There's lots of little messages that we absorbed as children that we then carry forwards throughout our entire life, and we might not never be aware of it, right? So counselors are good at pulling that out and going like, oh, have a look at this. Does that really belong into your life today? You know? So what we basically do, and this comes straight out of narrative therapy, it's a lovely word, we deconstruct the narrative. It's like we're pulling these things apart and we go like, there's an element here that we might not really need. It doesn't help. It's not helpful for where we want to go. Instead, we then start looking, okay, if we look at your life as a carer, for example, where have you proven and shown that you can be really organized, that you can be really focused, that you can be really connecting with people? Because so many times carers are incredibly resourceful, ingenious, focused, strong, courageous, because they have to be. So they never really apply to themselves. They always think, well, that's just the situation, that's just how it is. But if we have a closer look, we can see there's a lot of skills and qualities in there that you apply already that we can draw on to then bring you forwards into another situation where you can just transfer those skills to the choices that you want to make that are only for yourself. So that's sort of then going into which elements can we put into your narrative, into your story, and bring them forward. And we can look for witnesses. Who has experienced you as a strong person, as a focused person, as a skilled person, and would say, if I asked them, so how do you experience Beth or John? And they would say to me, I think she is really resourceful. The way she always comes up with solutions of finding someone to care for her loved one while she needs to go into the shopping or whatever, right? So it's like there's stories out there that we can pull upon that makes the narrative that you hold about yourself more powerful, more empowered, right? So, and that is usually a beautiful time in counseling because we are moving into something that opens up a lot of doors for people, even in their minds, right? And that's basically what we then want to do is create a narrative that is empowering, enabling, strengthening, and supporting the idea of doing something for self, right? So the last element of all of that is to then deal with the anxiety that comes up when you start stepping out. When you start going like, okay, what is the logistical situation behind me actually going out and doing something? And I know Alex is going to talk towards that a little bit later in the practical sense. But what happens is we meet anxiety when we do that, right? There's a lot of the time we start thinking about, oh, I want to do something new. And there's something in your mind that goes like, oh my God, I can't do this. So that's where it becomes very concrete in counseling. And we really go like, okay, there's certain skills you can learn that help you bring that anxiety along. And I always talk about anxiety that comes with growth, which is good anxiety to experience, right? The anxiety of staying at home and being put and paralyzed just turns its own wheel and there's no growth in that. But the anxiety we experience when we step out and when we grow, that's an anxiety we can bring along to our journey that we can deal with, and it will actually help us stay on our toes. It can be harnessed as an energy that brings us forward as well. And we can learn to be, for lack of a better word, to just bring it along and befriend it by making enough room for the discomfort that comes, by becoming aware of how does it manifest in our bodies. There's a lot of different lovely skills that we then practice in the session very concretely. And I'm very much a brain and body person, so I always bring the carer to explore what's going on in your body and what can you bring to that discomfort right now that makes it possible to move forward, instead of letting it paralyze you to where you really want to get away from, if that makes sense, right? So that is just one example. And of course, counseling is never a linear situation. So it's not like we have a program of 6 sessions, so this is what we're going to work through. This all happens in the context of whatever else might be important. I just wanted to kind of pull this out and highlight this as a journey that can happen in a counseling situation. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. So that's just one example. So again, if you have any questions, if that makes you curious, then do write them in, and maybe Tracy can read them out and we can have a bit more of a chat about that later on.
But yeah, no, thanks for that, Maddie. It was I caught most of that, which is excellent, around bringing, as you say, that little bit of stress or anxiety to the fore, because as you say, that can be a really preposis, can't it, for that change to happen? But then you need to know how to move beyond that and know how to get there. So it'd be good to know more about those sort of steps and sequences. And I think
there's a couple of questions for Maddie in the chat pod too.
Yeah, do you want to maybe read those, Alex, while I see if I can get this up there?
Absolutely. So from Monica, thank you, Monica. Thank you for the talk and information. How do we go about setting up a carer peer support group? Excellent question. I guess, do you want to talk to the Carer Gateway sort of around that, Maddie, or?
Yeah, so for the in-person peer support groups that the Carer Gateway offers, it's part of what you can participate in when you've gone through the intake process. So the groups, it's basically a carer goes through the intake process and then expresses their interest in becoming part of such a group. And then the referral gets made to our team, the in-person peer support group team, who then puts the carers together, contacts everyone and says, okay, we've got X amount of people together, let's start a group, what time would work best for everyone. Either if we've got people in an area, then it can be a face-to-face group, or otherwise it's being done on Zoom. So we've had a few groups that actually run in the evening as well, because some carers can only do it in the evening. So there is a bit of more flexibility that's coming in with those groups now.
My understanding from the Carer Gateway is that it is only a short time frame that you are part of that group, that it's funded, and it's a structured peer support program that they take you through.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's obviously the idea, I guess they are hoping, is that people, the carers, yeah, exactly, and can continue that group. But otherwise, I think I can see Pauline has written about your part of a team called, and your peer support group is called My Time, and it's statewide, which is excellent, because obviously there's different providers doing different things with Carer Gateway across the state. So and in the more regional areas, I know there's actually problems with numbers. There's some carers I'm aware of that are waiting for a peer support group, and because there isn't the numbers. That might be another option to talk with some other existing groups out there. So thanks for offering that, Pauline.
Yeah, and I have, in fact, that's what I do. I do pass the information from My Time on to some of my carers that I've seen counseling when that emerges as being an important part for them as well. So yeah, I have that information. Thanks, Pauline. It's good.
So basically, yeah, thank you so much, Maddie. I really enjoyed hearing you pulling apart and the metaphors that you used as well around counselling and what it can offer. It also made me feel really supported, because I think that anyone who's working in the carer space is often trying to also reflect back to carers these sorts of things when it comes up. But it's obviously not as my skill base isn't as in depth, and it's not as structured, and that's really just so nice for me to hear that that's what's going on in counselling sessions. And I have been encouraging carers to engage with Carer Gateway, and I guess one of the things is that now it's not something that they can, I'm told that you can't identify counselling as sort of something you want, but it's through that assessment process, as you explained. So I guess there's if if it doesn't work out for you with the Gateway, I think I always also encourage people. There is quite a lot of funding now for the mental health plans, and wherever you can access counselling, I think that it is a great support for carers, and it's very nice for me to think of like as a complementary support if it is that carers are tackling or looking towards work goals. I think to have counselling there, helping with your personal goals, if it is just arranging, your fitting your work into your life is one of the major issues for carers. So how you're going to be able to do that, counselling can really support arranging your life again. So in regards to sort of that more practical end, where I guess I'm trying to be as getting carers to that end state. If you're not there, then I guess, so we talk about readiness, and I think that's something that coaching also really talks about. So work readiness, I guess I guess the main thing with readiness is timing, is about how comfortable you feel. What like the stages of change is something that I often think about. So I think that was initially for maybe it was for victim abuse, I think. Is that right, Maddie? The stages, the cycle of change, are you familiar with that? So I guess there's the stages like the contemplation stage, the preparation stage, and then moving towards action. So I think one of the indicators for that I understand with carers is the language that you're using. Is it something that you're just thinking about in your own head and doing some initial research, or is this something you're voicing to your loved ones? Is it something you're kind of actively communicating or talking or in networking with looking at there's job networks, so looking at online resources, and I guess that's a really good sort of to reflect back. How ready are you? Is this something that you're moving towards and being able to clearly communicate? And I think carers, if it has been a long time, I think getting into that, recognizing the skills that you've been using as a carer is a big element of that. So I'm definitely, that's really what I'm talking with the carers through this program a lot. I think that I just wanted to point out that I'll just get my notes up. That there's a lot of carers who've registered with. I know that we're talking about health and wellbeing today, so I just wanted to point out that bringing it back to the topic of work, and about half of the participants on this project have been interested in working in health and the social care sector in some form or another. So, a lot of carers are talking about giving back, passing on some of the knowledge and the skills that they've learned to help others. There's lots of carers that have talked about learning the hard way in regards to managing their own health and well-being, and through that experience they might then feel like passionate to share with others. So and this is common across the board of from all carers, I think. And then there are of course those carers who would prefer to work in anything but health and well-being. So it's about half, I think, and as a way of breaking away from their caring role. So I think just whatever your choice regarding this, I think that it's a really good idea just to be aware of just understand what works for you, and better prepare for what you're going to if it is work that you want to tackle, then like I said, it's how are you voicing this? Are you having conversations with your support network? So I think that is one of the first stages. I think that voicing and really having the conversations that you need to have if it is that this is a really, you're going to be leaving your loved one. Is it that you need to talk to formal support networks, the NDIS plan manager, or support coordinators around how to structure this this thing that you want. So and that can be very tricky, I understand, because it's, you know, obviously structuring the support for the person you care for, that then will enable you to do other things. So I think trialing, having some days off from your caring activities is a really good start. Social activities and short courses, so moving into that education space. I think just having some, you know, trialing is a good idea. So this is all that preparation that you need to do, doing your research. So educating yourself around, you know, possible work options, I think is you know, very important. What you know, and all of this preparation will really, you know, make the idea of like the choice that you make of, you know, firstly, the chances of you getting a job, you know, if you're better prepared and better knowledgeable, will be greater. And then also, you know, that a job that will make sense to your situation. So, you know, if it is drawing in your caring experience, then, you know, I've definitely witnessed a lot of people through this program really, you know, become aware of these skills that they have gained through caring. And if it is to work in health and social care, or they are, you know, across the board transferable skills that you can apply, and being able to better communicate that will you know, make your experience, you know, your chance of getting the role and your experience, you know, more and more meaningful. And then it'll also, you know, better prepare you in regards to, you know, if you've had some experiences trialing and doing these activities or some short courses, then, you know, you've seen other support networks step up. Perhaps you've got, you know, other children, other family members that might, you know, surprise you and step up to a role, you know, where they're able to help you. And I think it is just really is just about taking the plunge. I think it's there is the amount of preparation you can do is you know, it will come to the stage where you know you do at some point need to step into it. And I would very much encourage carers to have that support, you know, if it is through practicing and voicing with your informal support networks, or accessing things like counselling, like Maddie has explained. A job coach, if you know, this program's going to be finishing up in June, unfortunately, but hopefully things in this space to help carers navigate these new platforms.
Yeah, no, but that sounded great, Alex, in regards to, as you say, I think carers do need to, have all that planning stuff happening, but have the courage to try and step in. It can be hard, though, because there is so much logistical stuff, isn't there, to move around and manipulate. But here's hoping we can inspire some of the carers out there to give themselves a go and have some belief in themselves and those networks, as you say, that hopefully can pick up where maybe they have to leave off to go and find something else that they're doing.
So, Christy, please tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved in health coaching and education, and why you think it's so important for carers.
Yeah, hi Tracy. Thanks for taking time out to interview me this morning. So yes, I'm a registered nurse by profession, and mum of two kids who've got autism. So my carer journey obviously started, you know, quite a few years ago. They're 14 and 12 now. And I found myself in a point where I was continuously stressed. I was overweight, not looking after myself, and it felt like the world was crashing down around me. And I had no motivation to get myself out of this particular spot that I was in. So I looked around for motivation, and I was thinking, I don't need a personal trainer. I just need somebody that's going to help me with the stress part of it.
Yes.
However, I couldn't get to the psychologist. Okay, the psychologist was all for the kids, and that's all I had time for, just running around after them.
Yeah.
So did a bit of digging around on the internet, and I stumbled across motivational interviewing. Now, motivational interviewing has been used and is used in psychology to help motivate people and build consistent habits until they become a learned behavior.
Right.
So I ended up doing a course on health coaching, which delved a lot further into motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
And then from that, I became an independent practitioner. And I found that I married my skills of being a registered nurse and naturally motivating people, along with being able to facilitate change with people. And it just an amazing transformation that I saw personally within myself. And also then I was able to give to other people and help them on their journey back to wellness. So I guess, my experience has all been about marrying my professional and my personal experience as a carer and trying to fit in all the things that you need to get your life working well, even though you've got that carer's responsibility, quite heavily weighing in the background. So fast forward to today, I'm a much healthier, much happier person. You still get the ups and downs, the highs and the lows, and you learn to ride the roller coaster, but you don't go into that hole. Okay, if you're looking after yourself well, you learn to stay out of the hole. If you do go into a hole, it's like for a day and then you bounce back the next day. So it's all about teaching people now that I want to pass on these skills and the nursing knowledge and medical knowledge that I've got to try and help as many carers to look after themselves, because ultimately we let ourselves go when we're carers. It's only natural that we give our all to people who we're caring for, whether that's elderly people with dementia, for instance. They're another very challenging group of clients, and the carers particularly stressed with their care also. So being a nurse as well and looking all around the social support network and things like that, and practical things that could be put in place, really take a holistic look at how we can improve the person's life, to get support in place, to get caring in place, to give the carers a break, for instance, and things like that. So it's a process that you go through to get to a better place, but it's amazing transformational change that I see in people. And by about the 10th week on a health coaching program, they're off and running, and the change is just amazing. It's like, well, my last client has actually called it life changing. I was like, oh, really? But yeah, she said absolutely life changing. So, and it is. So I strongly encourage anybody out there who's listening to this podcast to have a look at health coaching and, see what it's all about, and see if it's, something that you want to do to help you if you're in a sticky situation or you're feeling a bit run down or overwhelmed.
Fabulous. No, it sounds like, you're very well equipped with having some of that background knowledge and education in the past, and then, as you say, you're teaming that up with that lived experience as a carer and maybe how you can then assist others with it. It's just, that's wonderful, and it's great that people like yourself are out there and approaching this, because health is, as you say, is a critical element, and I think a lot of us carers tend to forget that. We put all our energy, as you say, into those who we're caring for, and then, wow, all of a sudden we're run down and as you say, can't get back up, or we start to, have things happen that, we don't really want to have happen. And it ultimately affects, I guess, your caring at the end of the day, as well as your own health. So what sort of things do you see, Chrissy, as some of the big health concerns that carers come to you with? What sort of things are you looking at to bring that holistic plan together?
Sure. So obviously, my demographic that I work with are parents and carers of kids on the spectrum primarily, although, I am open to looking after any carer's needs whatsoever. But the main things that I find is fatigue, overwhelm, and severe levels of stress, off the charts levels of stress. And these people have been back and forth to their GP, feeling tired, having blood tests, nothing really coming up, but the whole picture hasn't been looked at. Because when you're going to see a GP, you might, if you're lucky, have 20 minutes with your GP. If you're, on the bulk bill system, you might have 5 minutes to get your point across.
Yes.
And so so a lot of these things like fatigue might be related to anemia. So your iron stores might be a bit low, or it might be hypo or even hyperthyroid, which has been diagnosed in a lot of my clients. And these tests aren't requested frequently. They're only requested in certain circumstances. So also things like chronic fatigue syndrome as well, and general inflammation in the body caused by stress is really causing a lot of pain, like non-specific pain in carers that they'll keep on going back to their GP and not getting answers for. The high blood pressure is also another one, obviously related to stress, and also poor lifestyle as well. So, you know, you'd be wanting to look at how we can improve lifestyle risk factors for heart disease, stroke, and diabetes, and trying to reduce your blood pressure and trying to look at losing weight, the abdominal weight, because that's where obviously the stress response in the body floods your body with cortisol, raises your blood sugars, okay, during that stress response. And then that leads to the weight gain around the middle, which everybody hates that weight gain around the middle. It's really, really hard to get rid of. But if you can put lifestyle factors in place, you know, such as bringing your stress levels down, you know, by eating better, by sleeping better, by doing a little bit of exercise each day, by bringing that general stress response down, that weight will come off, and you will also be feeling a lot healthier for it. So, so I mean, what I found when I was working on coronary care, and then I worked in the day stay unit, and I found a lot of people coming in for cardiac investigations, angiograms, you know, looking at the coronary arteries of their heart for any narrowings. And I was shocked. It was absolutely shocking to see the people coming in just as a day surgery as opposed to the people in coronary care. Yes. In coronary care, you'd be seeing the people who actually had heart attacks. And they, you know, it would be consistently sort of around the 45, 50 mark. 50 years of age, would, you know, they're getting a lot younger these days than when I first started nursing in cardiac, you know, 20 years ago. And so, but what I saw during like the day stay kind of area was that these people were getting diagnosed with 2-vessel coronary artery disease, and they were overweight. They got shown a video, and then they got sent home to see their GP for follow-up. Now, you put yourself in the life of a carer, you can't get to the GP for follow-up. And if you get to the GP for follow-up, you might be lucky to get a dietitian review or see the nurse, but generally, most people are told, you've just got to lose weight. You've just got to get fit. You just got to do this. And it's hard. So, you know, that's where, you know, ultimately behind all of this is my mission to try and help carers, you know, from developing these preventable diseases. So, you know, even diabetes type 2 can be reversed. Lifestyle medicine now is finding that it can be reversed with lifestyle modifications. So, you know, and I have actually seen people, you know, like in the last few years that have actually, you know, reversed their blood sugar issues. They might still have a little bit of underlying insulin sensitivity, but their blood sugars are no longer high. So yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah, wow. And I think that sort of highlights that connection, as you say, to that whole medical stuff in the background could be going on, and it's worth getting screened. But yes, as you say, you do need to probe a bit deeper to get those, as you probably know, I actually have fibromyalgia and was diagnosed with that probably about 8 years ago, and went through exactly that sort of thing where I had the fatigue and really run down, really out of sorts for someone who normally is full of energy and raring to go. And thankfully my doctor decided that she would randomly do a test and find out that I had pernicious anemia, which is an autoimmune conditioning behind it. And then once that started to be treated, that obviously made a lot of change, but there was a lot of other things that I sort of added in there as well, as you say, all those lifestyle things and getting that motivation back again to sort of live a better, more holistic life. And you know, looking after myself was one of those priorities that had to be initiated. So, yeah, no, it's really interesting to hear.
And I just want to add as well that I've come across a lot of carers that, excuse me, because they haven't got the skills to cope with their situation, they turn to other ways of coping, namely alcohol. They might be smoking a bit of weed to try and get that sleep at night. You know, they might be doing over-the-counter medications, you know, or you know, sort of accessing medications from other ways that are potentially harmful to them as well. So yeah, so and it is quite hidden as well, especially the alcohol problem. So I've come across quite a few people who their GPs weren't aware of actually the level that they were drinking at. And you know, obviously I was able to discuss this with the client, saying, are you happy for me to discuss this with the GP? Because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to admit that you've got a problem with alcohol or drugs because of your inability to get support for caring. So that's where, you know, sort of linking in with your GP is really important first step.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess some people may wonder, I guess, how your services might differ from, you know, the personal trainer and all these other, there's heaps of different type of health professionals, they say, out there that are working in this space. So could you give us a bit of an insight, I guess, how you may work with a carer day to day when they're not well?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing that I do is I do a thorough health assessment, which takes an hour, sometimes an hour and a half if we get really chatting and really delving in deep to something. And we start peeling away the layers of actually what's going on. So, so as I said before, you know, their sleep, it might be linked to so many other things. You know, their fatigue the next day might be linked to sleep apnea, for instance. You know, they might be having palpitations and not doing anything about it. And so having a really thorough health assessment, something that can really uncover, you know, hidden diseases early on before they cause any real problems, is really, really instrumental to keeping your health well and keeping you out of hospital and keeping you in a caring position. So I would obviously, you know, with the agreement of the client, then I would consult the GP and just inform them of the whole picture. Because if you've got, say, somebody, for instance, who can't get to the GP, it's not for a want of not getting to the GP, but you know, they might have violent children, you know, they might have suicidal children in the background, you know, they might have no time at all to spare. And it's just going from one appointment to another and another. So I can then advocate on the client's behalf to say, look, this is so-and-so, so-and-so. I recommend that they have blah, blah, blah. And then I leave it with the GP to respond back to me. And 9 times out of 10, the GPs are very responsive to the recommendations that I make. And, you know, it's the first step on, you know, getting clearance for them to be able to exercise and to you know, get to a better place. Because sometimes things do come up from that health assessment that do warrant further investigations before you can exercise. And I think one of those things, particularly from me coming from a cardiac point of view, is if you've had palpitations in the past, then don't leave the palpitations, okay? If you can feel that you've got an irregular heart rhythm, so you know, you listen, you know, you feel your pulse. And if it's not regular, if it's not boom, 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 okay, if it's going boom, 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 okay, if it's doing any of that, then you need to go and see a GP within 24 hours. If you feel unwell, you need to go straight away. Or if you feel really unwell, you need to phone 000. But atrial fibrillation is really commonplace, and it's an irregular heart rhythm, and it really significantly increases the risk of stroke and heart attack. So that is something for carers to be aware of, and it's easily sorted out. And will prevent you from having an emergency mission. So,
absolutely. It's worth picking it up, isn't it? If you can, the sooner the better.
But on a day-to-day way of how health coaching works, I sit down with the client, we work out a goal. So we choose one goal that they want to work on. So say, for instance, they want to lose weight. So they want to lose weight. So we work out how they're going to do it. What have they tried in the past? What's worked for them? What are they happy about trying or not trying? And incorporate what they want into it. So the beauty of motivational interviewing is you do more of the things that you like to do, and you're more likely to do it.
Absolutely,
The other thing with carers is that you've got to build it into routine. Really, really important. It's if you're starting off on the weight loss journey, and you've worked out, okay, so I'm going to order in, food so that it's prepared, ready, and I know exactly what I'm eating. That's great. But don't let that be the sole point of losing weight. You need to add some other things in. Just start very gently on exercise, just 5-minute walk a day. And by doing a 5-minute walk a day, it will actually work better in creating a new neural pathway in your brain and creating a habit than a once a week, 75-minute intensity exercise session. Where you're much more at risk of developing injuries, and other complications.
It's a really one.
So we meet weekly after that, once we've set all the goals, and there might be absolutely tiny goals that have to be set, because some people are really, really resistant to change, and some people are really scared of change. So, sometimes those little goals have to be really small to give somebody some wins, to then make them feel good about themselves. And once they get to about week 10, they're off and running. They're just like, right, I know what to do now. I've got the tools. I know what to do for my body and how to do it. And this I can fit in my life. And that's basically where we're at. So, you should be able to learn from the tools that are given to carry on this consistently.
Fabulous. That's great. Excellent. That really gives a good understanding around how that may work and look for a carer. And I like the idea of that whole practicality, thinking around, okay, what is really realistic at the moment for me, where I'm at. As you say, those little baby steps might be needed before, we really get into a rhythm of a bit more commitment to it. But I think, as you say, it's important to start small and grow that sort of those skills, I guess, isn't it? It's about developing skills to look after yourself. Excellent. So is there any other services, Chrissy, that you might tap into or that you think carers should look into alongside your type of work that you're doing?
Sure, yes. Look, I mean, obviously, coming from the medical profession, there's, people are probably aware at the moment that there's a mental health care plan that carers can get 20 Medicare rebated sessions of psychology. You can get that for yourself as a carer. You can also get it for the person you care with. So that's essentially 40 mental health care plan sessions that you can get. And I think the Medicare rebate's about 70% of it. So, it's a small out-of-pocket cost. Yes, obviously things like NDIS then come into play, once you've exhausted that as well. But you can also get through the GP, a GP management plan, where you can also get, for instance, 5 sessions of physiotherapy. You might have musculoskeletal pain. You might have a previous back injury or something like that. So, a little bit of physio to help you, show you the right way, and a little bit of massage. Right?
Really beneficial. Yep.
5 dietitian sessions as well. So, if you've got specific dietary issues, a lot of people have got gut issues.
Yep.
It might be a good idea to get the 5 dietary sessions on the GP management plan. It used to be called the Enhanced Primary Care, but they changed the name a little while ago.
Yep.
But those are the sort of 3, the physio, the chiro, and the dietitian. They're probably the 3 that I would say are the probably most beneficial. But it's 5 in a calendar year. So, yeah, it's not that much. They could be a bit more generous. You could potentially do 2 of dietitian and 3 of physio. You can mix it up a bit.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well, which is really important that I found out a little while ago, I was looking after a client there was no way we were going to get her to the doctor. So I spoke to the practice nurse manager. So I suggest that if anybody else is having this issue that I'm about to tell you about, that they phone up a practice manager and speak to them. But I actually got the doctor to do a telehealth consult.
Right.
And then, like through the recommendations that I gave him as well, he was able to then send out a blood form to this person's house.
Yes.
And she rang the pathology centre. They sent somebody to her house to have bloods taken. And this is not just for elderly people.
Yes.
For people who can't get to the doctors.
Wow.
So I've even had it for myself, for my kids.
Yes.
To have bloods here because it was too much for them to get to the GP, and
that's a good tip.
sensory overload, and and the same with ECGs and Holter monitors as well. They can put those on at home, so again, it saves the overwhelm, the time, all the logistical stuff of having to get somebody in to care for your kids while you have that. So that's a really big help for people to know as well. Obviously in the public system, you've got psychiatry and psychology and all the mainstream allied health that I said earlier. But obviously Carers New South Wales and Carers Australia, they're, very good at supporting carers. They've actually particularly helped us in the past as well by giving us some emergency respite when things were really tough. And we had like a 12-week program of respite. Just 2 hours every week, but it was enough to get us over that hump and get us back to feeling on top of things again. So they also provide counselling as well, which is really, really important. And I would also encourage people to find their tribe through Facebook, people who are going through the same issues as them, so they can just even if there's somebody local that they can meet up with for a coffee, maybe once a week, just to, both, like 2 of you, both offload your week and then just go, right, okay, let's enjoy this time. And then we'll, let's press reset and start again. So, it's so important as carers to have that break. So if there's any way of trying to get respite in place, whether it's an informal carer, it might be a neighbour or a friend, just to take over the care for an hour or 2 once a week, it can be done. And if you do need more help, then obviously, you can get in touch. But it's, there are services out there that can help you as well. So, yeah. Okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. That's a wealth of information, and I think it really highlights lots that can be done. It's just, as you say, just understanding where you can go and turn to, and lots of good opportunities. I love the tip about having the doctor or the pathology come on down to the house. I had never known you could do that. So I knew about some of the telehealth stuff, and I think a lot of us have heard it through COVID that had been something they've been doing quite a bit. But it's good to know about that if you're not able to get out, or it's just too much, to sort of reach out and see if that is an option for you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And I love the tips also around, reaching out to your tribe. I think that is something, as a carer myself, is found very valuable. And there are lots of informal and formal type peer support type programs out there. So, I think that's another way, definitely to reset the batteries, isn't it? To recharge and feel like you're not alone, and share some of those experience and knowledge as well across the groups, and hopefully get some new energy to go again. As we need.
That's right. Exactly.
Fabulous. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Chrissy, for joining us. I really appreciate your time. And to all those carers out there, we do hope you are well. But if you are feeling a bit under the pump, or you're feeling like things are slipping, reach out to someone like Chrissy. Hopefully there's someone near you. And if you have any questions for us, by all means, please email me. At the end of the video, you'll have my email address, and I can forward them on as needed. So thanks again, Chrissy. We'll stop there.
Okay. All right. Finally able to get that done. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. And I hope you found that relevant to you, and you may have some questions that start to pop up. By all means, you're most welcome to pop some up now, or if you want to reach out to me or to Alex, I'm sure we can help direct you, and anyone that's attended or registered to come will get a copy of all